Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about covalent bonding. Covalent bonding is a sharing of electrons, so unlike ionic bonds where they give away electrons, in covalent bonds they share. A single covalent bond is made up of two electrons. One electron is donated to the bond from each atom. To make up those two electrons, one electron is donated to the bond from each atom. Covalent bonding occurs between nonmetals only. Atoms that are covalently bonded are called molecules or molecular compounds. Properties of molecular compounds. Covalent bonds are much weaker than ionic bonds. They have a much lower melting point and boiling point. They are solid, liquid, or gas at room temperature. And they do not conduct electricity no matter what state they're in. The chemical formula for a covalently bonded group of atoms is called a molecular formula. It indicates the exact makeup of one molecule. An example might be C6H12O6. And that is a picture of what it looks like. So it tells you that there are 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens in that molecule. Because we're doing covalent bonding, it only involves so many elements or atoms. So it can involve hydrogen and then things from group 14, 15, 16, or 17. And if we remember, hydrogen has 1 valence electrons. Anything in group 14 is going to have 4 valence electrons. Things in group 15 are going to have 5 valence electrons. Things in 16 will have 6 valence electrons. And things in group 17 will have 7 valence electrons. Now, we have talked about the octet rule before, and that most things want 8 electrons. That applies to everything except for hydrogen and helium. So hydrogen wants 2 because that's our full outer shell is 2. So they are 1 electron short and therefore will form 1 bond. Things in group 14, 15, 16, and 17, they all want 8 electrons. So if it's in group 4 and 14 and it has 4, it wants 4 more electrons, so it will form 4 bonds. In group 15, they want 3 more electrons, so they will form 3 bonds. In 16, they have 6, so they want 2 more, so they will form 2 bonds. And things in group 17 want 1 more valence electron, so they will generally form 1 bond. So we're going to write the dot and structural formula for H2 first. Now remember, hydrogen has 1 valence electron and it wants 1 more. So hydrogen has 1 valence electron. This 2 tells us that there are 2 of them, so we're going to multiply by 2. So we have 2 valence electrons to work with, or 2 electrons to work with. And if we divide that by 2, there should be 1 pair or 1 bond between them. So I will draw my H with its one valence electron, and there are two of them, so I have my other H with my other valence electron. What happens in covalent bonding is we circle them because these two hydrogens are both going to voluntarily share each of those electrons so that it acts like each has two when really they're just sharing two. The dot formula, we write our H's and then we put that shared electron pair in the middle. For the Lewis structural formula, we write our H's, and instead of the circled electrons, it gets one line to say that is bonded. Okay, so we're going to check to make sure this is correct by going back to the top. This top says that we have one pair or one bond. Here is one bond shown. So we are correct. Our next example is O2. So oxygen has 6 valence electrons. 6 times 2 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4 pairs or 4 bonds. So I'm going to draw my 2 oxygens with their 6 valence electrons. They will share these electrons. They will share these electrons. What that looks like for the dot formula, they are sharing those 4 electrons that we circled. And then there are 2 pairs of unshared electrons for each oxygen. For the Lewis structural formula, we draw our oxygens with their unshared pairs. And then instead of the circles, we draw a straight line to represent those bonds. I just noticed I did math wrong up here. So let's erase that. So 6 times 2 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6 electrons. 6 pairs or bonds that we should have. When I check that, let's use a different color. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is correct. Our next example is nitrogen, or N2. Nitrogen has 5 valence electrons. There are 2 of them, so 5 times 2 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5 pairs or 5 bonds. Okay, so I'm going to draw my nitrogen with its 5 valence electrons. And there are 2 of those. They're going to share this pair, and finally this pair. So when we draw our dot formula, we have our ends with their unshared pair of electrons. Between them, they are going to share 6 electrons. To draw our Lewis structural formula, We use lines instead of the circles. So there are 3 circles, so we draw 3 lines. And then we still have our unshared pairs on our ends. Our next example is H2O. So we have 2 that are 1 valence electron, that's the hydrogen, plus our 6 for our oxygen, it's our valence electrons, so that's 8. 8 electrons divided by 2 is 4. So we're looking for 4 pairs or bonds. Here's a very helpful hint or tip. Put the atom in the middle that must make the most bonds. So hydrogen needs 1, but oxygen needs 2. So oxygen is going to go in the middle here. And I'm going to draw my valence electrons for my oxygen. Then I'm going to conveniently place my hydrogen next to my oxygen where they need the extra electron. So they're going to share those and these. When I draw my dot structure, it's essentially going to look just like my rough copy for now. O. Different angles are okay, so they could be in a straight line. They could be bent. And now, instead of showing my sharing electrons, I'm going to show the bond between the H and the O and the other H, along with the valence electrons. Our last example, try to do it on your own before continuing. So pause it right now. Try to do it. Our oxygen has 6 valence electrons, plus our nitrogen has 5, plus our fluorine has 7. That makes for 18 electrons that we're working with. Divide by 2, we're going to have 9 pairs or bonds. Okay. 5 is my lowest number, so I know that goes with nitrogen, so it goes in the center because it needs the most bonds. Go ahead and draw the valence electrons for nitrogen. On one side, I'm going to put the O. On the other side, I'm going to put the F. Let's go ahead. I know that my fluorine has 7 valence electrons, so I'm going to draw those. I know that my oxygen has 6 valence electrons, so I'm going to draw those. In another color, these are going to share, these are going to share, and these are going to share. When drawing my dot formula, I'm just going to put those dots in between. Remember, there are 4 dots that are circled between the N and the O, so I have 4 dots there. Now for my Lewis structure, I'm going to replace the circles with lines. So I have my F with 1 line to the N. Its unshared pair of electrons on top. Then between my O and my N, there are 2 circles. So I draw 2 bond lines and my 2 unshared pairs of electrons. If you guys have any questions, please make sure you message me and ask. This is just the beginning of bonding. You may need to get out another sheet of paper because you cannot draw these online unless you have an iPad or use Cami. So you may need to get out another sheet of paper and take a picture of your electron dot structures. Thank you all so much. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, please let me know.